Let's talk to Dr. Melanie, who is here from UCL, political science professor on US politics. Dr. Melanie, very good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Nice to see you. I'm going to start off by just playing a couple of clips so that we can talk about them. Here's what Kamala had to say about climate change.
That the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act.
Deadlines around time. I mean, isn't every deadline around time? Sorry. Next one is Tim Walz, who was sitting there like a sort of ventriloquist dummy until somebody put their hand up his back, and he spoke about carrying weapons in service.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war, yeah. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, everybody knows what he said. And he didn't say of weapons of war. He said weapons I carried in war. That's what he said. He was in the National Guard. He says his service is out there. Yeah, it is. He never went to war. He was in the National Guard. That's like being in the Weekend Warriors, frankly. Sorry, Dr. Melanie, I find myself frustrated because I want to hear what they actually will do. I haven't found a clip yet that says what from Kamala Harris's sort of policy documents what she would do. They sort of waffle around every single question without answering it.
It was true, and sort of the general consensus has been that this was, to put it mildly, an awkward interview, and the campaign has, you know, their own campaigners have been desperate to try and get them in front of the media, say they've waited too long to get in front of the media, and the whole setup of the talk was, or of the interview, was somewhat awkward in that respect, and there was a lot of stumbling over these policy positions. They did try to clarify some of them. We began to get some insight into, you know, how much of Biden's policy that extend what, you know, would this be a different format? There was a bit of confusion over this question of, you know, values versus policy. But it wasn't, as you said earlier, necessarily a tour de force of an interview, but you know, and she's going to have to do more of these to gain more confidence of the American public.
But I think it seems to me it must be a deliberate strategy that they've pulled on here, where basically they just talk about how awful Donald Trump is because there are some people in America who agree with that and some people who will vote based on that. They basically vote for anybody but him. But the trouble is, there's an awful lot of people that will vote for him. And so unless they can say this is what we will do different, as opposed to if he gets in, he's going to wreck the country. You know, he didn't wreck the country last time he was in. You know, I think they're going to struggle because people can see through it. I mean, people are much smarter, I think, intellectually and sort of, you know, in reality than the politicians give them credit for.
Absolutely. I think there's a tension, and I think this is one in, you know, particularly in this short interview, it's sort of how much airtime do you give to talking about Trump to actually talking about policy? So I think, you know, be careful not to slip into it actually just turning into a Trump bashing session. And we saw that when they, you know, asked about Trump's comment on her color, and she was just like, basically not going there. And that might be just a strategy to not talk about that. But you're right to the point that if you're not going to do that, you need to replace that with that substantive, concrete, step by step. And what was disappointing was that first answer to what will you do on day one?
Right.
You know,
and she couldn't answer it. And this was a nonsensical thing about, you know, we can play that clip actually. This is a nonsensical thing about, you know, I'm going to help the middle class. Well, how exactly? Let's have a look.
What would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and in an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy.
And you know, and bringing in my plan, which I'm not going to tell you about having an opportunity economy. I mean, it's a bit like talking to somebody who's stoned, you know? When you ask them a question, they just go round and round and kind of forget where they started and forget where they're going.
I mean, from my perspective, a lot of people's perspective, it was a disappointing opening. Even a joke might have been better about possibly not taking down pictures. Right. But it was, so it didn't win you over from the get-go. I think this is, you know, an experience thing, whether it's a question of not categorically setting out the policy, but we talk as policymakers, bottom line up front, right? To give us your, whenever we say policy, give us your bottom line up front. What is it going to look like?
Right.
The first thing.
I mean, if you're a policy specialist, right? I mean, do you know anything about what her policy is?
It's not been clearly articulated.
I mean, there isn't any.
We've been getting these, you know, the home subsidies, you know, sort of helping homeowners. That's being very much so the $25,000 to help people get on the map. The child care subsidy, trying to prevent child poverty. It's in there. It needs to be more clearly articulated to really sort of sway people onto her side. It's got to be, you know, for anybody.
Maybe
these hard questions have to be answered.
She doesn't really have any, you know.
Well, she's got a smart team and smart people, and she's been there long enough that I can't imagine having been vice president for 4 years and having looked around and think, you know what, this is what I would change if I was in charge. Right. So I'm sure she's got them there.
Well, you'd like to think so.
There's a question of how it's been articulated.
But it's all very vacuous, though. I don't know. Listen, I could be wrong. I just fear that that she's not. I don't think she's going to win, because I just don't think she's got enough in her to get over the line. And, you know, when she debates Trump, I think that's going to be the kind of pivotal moment, for me anyway. And if he doesn't do anything stupid, he can win that hands down and he gets the White House, I think.
We're all going to be looking at September 10th, I believe the date is.
Yes.
See, you know, now they've got the rules sorted on that. Hopefully we will see, a full debate. And, you know, I think the thing is, she is a former prosecutor. This should be her, you know, her field. This should be her forte.
Yeah, her and Keir Starmer.
Let's see how it goes.
Her and Keir Starmer, former prosecutors. I think we should probably ban former prosecutors from ever running for anything ever again. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Melanie Garson there from UCL, science professor on US politics, political science professor, I should say.